Alright, so in this video we're going to start talking about something that you've probably heard of before called parent functions. And just as a reminder, what parent functions are that they are kind of the big main functions that we'll talk about. There are more than these once you get into some more advanced courses, or maybe even later on in this year we'll get into some more, but these are the big ones that we're going to talk about during this unit. We focused a lot in Algebra 1 on these two right here, linear and quadratic, and we're going to add in some radical and absolute value functions. We're just going to look at the parent functions during this video. This one's going to be pretty short and sweet. So the equations for these are, I'm going to write them in function notation here. F of x equals x. And remember, f of x would be our output, x is our input. Okay, so really in our table we could have, instead of y, we could have f of x in this column. Input, output. Quadratic, the basic parent function is x squared, y equals x squared, or f of x equals x squared. Radical, we're going to look at two. A radical is basically a root, so maybe add that in there in parentheses. We're going to look at, f of x equals square root of x, and we're going to look at f of x equals the cube root of x. And then the absolute value, we're going to do f of x equals the absolute value of x. And just as a reminder, in case you don't remember what absolute value is, you can choose to write this in or not if you want to. Absolute value basically just tells us the distance from zero that the number is. So it basically is something that evens out a negative. So the absolute value of negative 10 is the same as the absolute value of positive 10 because they're both 10 away from zero. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to pause the video here for a minute. You should do the same. And what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and fill out these functions for the values that I give you here. So we're going to do the basic linear one for the values from -2 up to 3. And then same thing for our quadratic. For our radical, we're going to go in kind of some different increments just because I only want to take the radical of a nice number, just so we can have nice points on our graph in a little bit. Same thing with cube root. You might need to get your calculator out for this one, or maybe just get your thinking cap on a little bit. And then absolute value back to just the basic -2 up to 3. So go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll come back and go through these. Alright, so I brought somebody in to help us. Check this out. This is Penny. Say hi, Penny. This is Penny. She was barking at the door to come in, so I thought she could come sit on my lap while we finish. So I went ahead and filled these in. Check your work. If you need to pause the video really quick just to make sure that you got it on the right track, go ahead and do so. Make sure you make note of anything that you have questions about for class tomorrow. We're just starting real basic here. Basically, it's defining those functions. The table of values is just kind of input it into the function, get the output, and write it down. So now that you've got that, what you're going to do is you are going to go on the graph and you're going to graph each of the functions just so you can have a picture of what each basic one looks like. Use the input-output pairs that we made to give you a start, but my directions would be to make sure that the graph extends across the whole grid. So don't just graph the 5 points that we outlined or the 6 points that we outlined, but actually do the whole thing. And then also label each function. So make sure you put a little label next to it. If at all possible, if you have them, maybe use different colors for each one. It just makes it easier to differentiate between each one as we're looking at it later when we get to part 2 and when we kind of do the in-class investigation. See you in class tomorrow.